Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm back live streaming again. Happy Australia Day long weekend. Just making sure I'm not boomering things on my end. I have a very special guest with me tonight, my good friend, fellow South Australian, Zach. How the bloody hell are you? How was your Australia Day weekend?
G'day, Kate. Yeah, wasn't too bad. Pretty quiet. Took the kids out fishing and my younger brother out fishing on Saturday, and then just nice relaxed day yesterday and today. Not too much.
Beautiful. Did you do any hunting or just fishing?
N- just fishing this weekend. It's been a bit too hot, and with kids starting school tomorrow, just nice easy weekend. So
It's been bloody hot here. It's 42 up where I am in Napperby, South Australia. I went to the beach yesterday to cool off, had a few beers for Australia Day because I'm proud to celebrate our beautiful country. And this gentleman, Zach, is the reason I started my podcast. I appeared on his show, Hunting Connection podcast, when I was living in Western Australia, and crazy things were happening there. And a lot worse things have happened since I left. So I appeared on Zach's show and he encouraged me to start my own. So the reason I am doing this is because of you, Zach. Thank you so much for your encouragement. It's not easy doing a podcast, as you know, especially
it
in
is
our
not.
community. But you are the reason I'm doing this today. So I cannot thank you enough for empowering and encouraging me. Thank you.
Well, I'm super glad you started it. After our chat, I just knew that you would be perfect for the position to do it, and yeah, you've absolutely shined. You've got an incredible channel and an incredible support around you. So it was
Thank
only
you.
fitting that
Thank you
you
so
started one.
much. And how's your podcast going? So you're the host of Hunting Connection podcast. You've been going for a while now. You were sponsored by my favorite shooting organization, Firearm Owners United, for a few years. You were the South Australian representative for them, and they helped you get your podcast going. How have you been finding doing that? And why did you start your podcast in the first place?
So yeah, I was supported by Firearm Owners United (FOU). Unfortunately, they've pulled the plug um, on everything to do with it. So unfortunately, it's just you know what the shooting community is like in in Australia. It can be quite backstabbing, a lot of tall poppy syndrome. So the board just got too sick of all the infighting and groups not wanting to work together, so they pulled the plug on that for now. Hopefully, one day they can start back up though. But the reason I started the podcast was to chat to different people about hunting, shooting, and all things outdoors, and just to meet incredible people like yourself. Through the podcast, I've met some amazing people and people that are going to be lifelong friends.
Beautiful. And we did get to meet finally in South Australia last year. We went out for some beers with some fellow hunters before I
We
headed
did.
up for my brief stint in Queensland, which I'm still devastated about how that turned out. But I was up there trying to fight the good fight in politics. Moved on from that now. But who's been your favourite guest on your show?
Oh man, that's a hard question. Every year I have a bunch of amazing people. I have a bunch of returning guests. I'm lucky. I've got a little room set up here where I can have people over if they're in South Australia to do podcasts. Within the last year, I've had some amazing people on. I've had Carly from No More Parks, like uh, Victorians against the Great Forest National Park in Victoria. She is absolutely incredible and doing an amazing job. I had Mark Cormitry, a local Indigenous elder who's very pro hunting. So I went down and met him in his area, and we sat in his car. The weather wasn't quite appropriate to do a podcast outside on the beach like we had planned, so we sat in his car on the Esplanade and just had a chat all things hunting and how the indigenous community and um, everyone can work together to make hunting a more understood culture in Australia.
Beautiful. You've had Aussie reviews on too, my mate from Queensland. He's an inspiration. I'm sure he had a few things to talk about.
Oh, he was amazing. I've had lots of requests to have him on, especially after we did your first episode together. I've never really spoken to him, and I'm not a massive YouTube guy. I listen to podcasts. I don't really have the time to sit down and watch channels. So it was really cool chatting to Ozzy. He's an awesome guy, and he's doing lots of great stuff for the shooting communities, and he's trying to bring a lot of us together, which is great to see.
Yes, it is hard to be united, especially when we have so much infighting. You said it before, tall poppy syndrome is a big thing in this country, especially in our community. But you've been doing some great work getting the word out there and talking to all these inspirational people. I wanted to have you on mainly to talk about what's happening in our beautiful state of South Australia. They banned bow hunting. The state government of South Australia, which is a Labor government at the moment, banned bow hunting, which came into effect in December. You are a big bow hunter and you've been doing that for some time. You've had
Yeah.
bad experiences with that. I'll ask you about that in a bit later. But what's been the effect? What's happening? So what are the laws exactly now? No bow hunting at all on private or public lands. Have you had to sell your bows? What's going on in this space?
So yeah, from December 1st, Susan Close, the Deputy Premier and Environmental Minister, and she's got many banners under her name. You know, she was acting police commissioner there for a while as well. Just way too much power for one person, especially when she's massively, got a massive ego and has to push through her own things and go around Parliament. Um, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, no bow hunting for me since December 1st. Fortunately, bow fishing is still legal. But yeah, since the ban's come into effect, it's been pretty hot. It's been pretty hectic. So I haven't even had the. And I'm gone. Something's crashed out then.
I can still
You
hear
still
you.
there?
Yeah, sorry, we're having technical difficulties this
Right.
evening. Sometimes the government loves to shut me down, I swear, but you're here. You're
There
still
we go.
here.
Susan Close is coming after me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so bow fishing is still legal, which is one fortunate thing because it's something I can get out and do with my kids. They both have their own bows and they both enjoy it. Um, but yeah, it's just that passion to shoot the bow has gone recently just because I haven't been able to get out, and it's so busy as well with life. Yeah, but that's about all. I haven't had to sell anything, fortunately. I'm still planning on hunting interstate. So I've got a trip to Victoria planned for about mid-September, and I've got a trip to New South Wales booked in for the end of March to go chase reds and pigs and fallow with my good mate Cody
Oh,
Gill.
yeah, Cody, he's a legend. He's the one who makes the funny memes.
He's the
Isn't
meme
he?
king, or as we call him the podstitute because he jumps around from podcast to podcast as a
I'll have
guest.
to have him on my show. I haven't had him on my show yet, so I'll have to get him on if he's a podcast guest. So, just going back to the bow hunting ban, what was their justification for this ban? Because it is still legal, like you said, in Victoria and New South. What was their reason in South Australia to ban this, including on private land? Because private property, you should be able to do what you want as long as you're not hurting anyone else. And they've made that
Yeah.
illegal too. So, what's their justification that they use for that?
So their justification is cruelty. She's no doubt got backing from the RSPCA. I think they're the ones that are behind it to push it. Apparently, it's been on her agenda to do since about 2011, from what I've heard. I know people from the ABA have gone up and met with her. She shut down the people from interstate pretty quick. So she wouldn't speak to anyone unless they were from South Australia. So they had to get a South Australian representative in to chat to her. But she was, from my understanding, pretty pig-headed. Like, this is what I'm doing, this is what's happening, and there's no changing my mind for it. So yes, she's pushed it through by going through proclamation through the Governor General, which means no voting on it through Parliament, which is just absolutely crazy because she knew that it wasn't going to get through. The previous government had done an inquiry into bow hunting, and they deemed that they shouldn't ban it, but there was a bunch of other paths to look down before banning it, and she just bypassed all of it. Unfortunately, what has happened is people go out and buy cheap bows from sporting goods stores, from eBay. They have no real understanding, and they shoot native animals with field points. And that's not an effective way to kill an animal. It's pretty cruel, and that's what they've played it off of. And all bow hunters under that cruel banner because of it.
Yeah, punishing all of us for the actions of a few. That's what the government tends to do. And also, your point about how she's gone about this is doing it the way she did. That's what they've done in Western Australia too. They've used majority of the laws have been written in the regulations, not the act. The regulations don't have to be voted on in Parliament. So that's how they're doing things now because they know, and I think they know there are people like you and I who have legitimate reasons and arguments for what we do, and we can prove that we do it safely and humanely. They don't want to hear it, so they use all their powers that they have to trample all over our rights, trample over property rights. Now we can't even. And another thing that you've said before is that the reason that you bow hunt is to put food on the table for your family, especially in a cost of living crisis. So they've taken that away from you. And the other thing is, this will make you go out hunting with guns. Do they realize that is going to be the effect of their policy?
Yeah, that's
Buy
that's
more guns is the
it's a
answer.
massive thing. I've got a look. I'm fortunate. I've got a firearms license, but there's lots of people that don't have a firearms license. So one, it's going to increase firearm ownership for majority, but there's people that bow hunt that can't get a firearms license due to mistakes they've made in the past. I'm one for forgiveness. Everyone makes mistakes, so they shouldn't be held accountable for it. So the bow hunting's a way for people to get out to deal with their mental health issues and whatever else, escape daily life, put food on the table, spend time in the environment. And for those people that can't get a firearms license, that's been taken away from them now. Now they've got no outlet. Fishing they might be able to take up, but unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people putting their bows up for sale since the bans come into place, and people just don't even want to fight for it anymore. We had the petition going for quite a while, and the numbers were pretty average. It was open up Australia wide. Yes, they probably wouldn't have taken into account the non-South Australian people, but the numbers that it got were just crazy. Like, you get a lot of these, like, I don't believe in bow hunting because I hunt with a rifle. It's just everyone plays against each other, and that's how we're going to fall.
I agree. So a few years ago, I think it's about a decade ago now, you were on an ABC show where you went hunting with a bow in Kangaroo Island, I believe, which is where my uncle has a property there. Beautiful part of South Australia. If you haven't gone there yet, please try and get across there. It's just stunning over there. And they do have a problem with cats. So you were over there bow hunting for a story for ABC. That story went out, and it wasn't portrayed negatively. It was just the story to show this is why we need hunters. They're doing a service, they're protecting native lands and farmers' properties too. And after that, you were doxxed and you were attacked by Peter, I believe it was, and there was a whole campaign. It went viral around the world, and you were the one who was attacked for that. Are you able to explain to people exactly what happened and the consequences of that and how you feel about it now, looking back?
Yeah, so what actually happened, it was about 2016. I was up at the Riverland at a mate's property, and we'd come across a rabbit burrow that was, had a bunch of feral cats living in it. So we set up and we shot every cat that came out of that hole. A few of them were kittens, and thinking nothing of it, I posted it to the bow hunting sites and the hunting sites on Facebook. Pretty proud. Feral cats are pretty switched on, and being able to get 4 or 5 of them in a day and a half, we were stoked. So we posted photos up, and it just there's a lot of trolls on some of those hunting pages that are, vegans pretending to be hunters, and then they use those photos to post to their vegan sites and anti-hunting sites. And it was shared to a few of those pages, and it blew up, and death threats started to roll in pretty quick within 48 hours, and it took a life of its own. I got doxxed by Anonymous, the hacktivist group. Fortunately enough, they didn't really get much right. I don't know why, but yeah, fortunate enough they didn't. I had the police show up to my house, even though that my Facebook at the time was under an alias. They still knew who I was and where to come and have a chat to. Fortunately, I got a pretty nice police officer who came around. Um, Ended up chatting, and he wanted to get into bow hunting after that, which was which was a pretty funny turnaround,
Good
come to tell.
work convincing the officers. See, inspirational. I told you it was a bloody inspiration.
So yeah, ran through all the gear there, and then one of my mum's friends, he worked as a journalist for the ABC, and he contacted her, and then he contacted me after getting her permission, and we organised to go across to Kangaroo Island on another mate's property to do a story about feral cats, and the threats that I was getting for something that I thought was pretty good for the environment, taking these invasive species. They're just an absolute massive pest, and they not only kill loads of native animals, but they carry a lot of disease like toxoplasmosis, and that can affect sheep and chickens and a bunch of other animals. So yeah, we did the story. We called in a couple cats. My mate put an arrow into one, shot it, and unfortunately it didn't die on camera. It ran off. He put another shot into it, and it died in the bushes. And they didn't play the story badly, negatively, but they went from that to a RSPCA lady sitting with kittens running around behind her and talking about how cruel it is, and then cut across to someone from the sporting shooters, saying bows are inhumane. You should only shoot them with rifles, which is, that's a dagger in the back to being someone from the hunting community. Everyone, like I preach all the time on my podcast and on Facebook, is we have to work together. Once one of our hobbies fall, it's all going to fall after that, and just rapidly. So that blew it up even more. I ended up getting a couple of hundred death threats a week through Facebook, but most of them, none of them really concerned me. At the end of the day, these people tend to don't believe in violence. They're,
Mm.
keyboard warriors. They're weak from their diet.
Yeah.
So it never really affected me too much. There was a few people that messaged me. They were angry to start off with, but once I explained, and I would message a lot of the ones that were nicer back, and then I ended up making friends through that. Not converted them into hunters, but changed their mind on invasive species in Australia. So that was great to see. And then you had people like Joe Rogan. He spoke about it on his podcast, not by name, but whenever he brings up feral cats, he talks about the bow hunting magazines here, got bow hunters holding up feral cats. So that was pretty good, and other people have spoken about it as well.
It's surprising to me to still hear that there are criticisms from the shooters in particular who don't support bow hunting when it's one of the oldest forms of hunting. It's a tradition, and it always surprises me when I hear people in our own community talk negatively about it, because you can use arguments to criticize any aspect of what we do, but the point is that we do it ethically, we do it humanely, we do it safely, we practice, practice, and practice. We don't go out there unless we are fully prepared, and that's something that I enjoy watching your stories on Instagram, because you show what it takes to go out on a hunt. You don't just pack your bag and head off on Saturday morning. It's a process of what you need to bring, who you're going with, safety procedures, knowing the weather, having communication. So if something happens. So it's also always disappointing when people from our own community use it as an excuse to have a go at us because they feel like the pressure is off of them. But at the end of the day, like you said, they'll just come for you next. So I really think the message that you're really good at getting out is to be united and protect each other instead of throwing each other under the bus when we're the ones getting attacked. I see it with the duck hunting too. We've got duck hunting season coming up in Victoria, and people are nervously waiting for the bag limits. I'm sure there'll be people who are upset, but we really need to take a step back sometimes and think how it affects individuals. So I'm sorry that that happened to you. Death threats, I've had death threats too. Do you think that the biggest attacks that you've had is from the vegans and the animal activists, or do you think sometimes it's from people in our own community? Who's worse?
Oh, look, I've had plenty from the vegan side, animal activist side, but to me they're all empty threats. It's more, people were saying that I did it to get famous and make a name for myself and all of that stuff, and that's not what I was doing. I was just sharing a hunt like I did every other hunt, with people on Facebook. So that's pretty disappointing. And there's still people to this day that blame me for the bow hunting ban because of what happened. And there's just no changing their minds. It's just kind of you have to block and delete because you just get them trolling. Um, but yeah, it's just one of those things. It's water off a duck's back to me. Everyone's welcome to have their views, and you know, it's just one of those things. You're gonna get hate when you're doing something good, like yourself. You get a lot of hate from the community, but you're only gonna get hate if you're doing something good.
I agree. That for me, the disappointing thing is from the organisations. Like I said, Firearm Owners United have always supported me and treated me with respect, and I'm so sad that they're not as active anymore. I hope they come back in full swing one day because that's what we need. We need a younger generation running an organisation that actually stands up for individuals and not goes into these meetings with politicians to stand up for the organisation. And that's exactly what we've seen in WA. That's why we are at the point that we are at now. So hats off to you for everything that you do as an individual to advocate and educate others about what you do. Now, I just wanted to know, what advice would you give shooters, hunters, or anyone listening about how to educate others or advocate for yourself when it comes to changing the law or speaking up if there is a law being discussed? How do you go about making change and advocating as an individual outside of an organization?
Look, I hate politics with a passion. I hate politicians with a passion. And before all of this bow hunting ban, I wanted nothing to do with politics. I never registered to vote up until a few years back, just because I despised everything to do with politics. There was never really any side I sat on the fence with. Uh, um, I find myself pretty in the middle, and I just absolutely hated it. But seeing what happened with the bow hunting community and taking on advice from someone in the chat, Daniel, who just popped in, he's given me amazing advice on what to do and how to do stuff. And everything I do, I run by him first because he's really good with that type of thing. Um, it's just working with everyone you can, emailing your MPs when something that you dislike happens. I'm not great with writing letters. I'm not great spelling. I'm not great with grammar. So recently, I've been very heavily dependent on using Chat GPT. I write a rough outline of what I want it to say. I punch it into Chat GPT. It spits it out, sounding amazing, and I use that to write all my emails. And if you go to the Parliament website, you can copy everything that it needs to have for them to take your inquiry or your message seriously. You punch what you want it to write, you punch that into ChatGPT, and it spits out everything that it needs in there. So name, address, number, just everything you need for them to take it into account. So that's how I've been doing things lately. And then, working with a bunch of different Facebook groups, like Carly's page. She has a huge following, and a bunch of people. It takes a couple minutes. With something like you can send it, you find the emails, and you can send multiple of them to different MPs.
Bloody brilliant. See, no one has an excuse anymore if you can't spell or you can't write. We've got AI. It's 2025. Get along with the times. There are a few people in the chat. Hi, Dan. He's one of my advisors too. I really appreciate his advice. He calms me down when I'm yelling and carrying on. So thank you, Dan. If anyone's just joining us, I'm Kate Fantanel, Lady Liberty, and I'm here with my good friend and fellow South Australian, Zach, who's got his own podcast, Hunting Connection podcast. He was a bow hunter. Well, he still is a bow hunter, but he can no longer hunt on public or private lands here in South Australia because the government has banned that. And to those in other states, that is a warning to you, because they will look at other jurisdictions and they will point there and say, we need to ban it here too. So that's why we need to stop things at the source. This is why I'm so passionate and still fighting for Western Australia, because I do not want these laws to spread. We have to stop it where it starts. So Zach did some great work trying to keep the sport in South Australia going, but maybe with the Liberal government, have you had conversations with those on the other side of Parliament about potentially reversing this ban after the next election in 2026? Is that something you're working on as a campaign?
So just quickly on something you said, we've only ever been able to bow hunt on private property. There's been no public land hunting in South Australia for quite a number of years. So they've only banned private property because it was already illegal to do it on public land. So that was a big kick in the guts. But yeah, the Liberal government, I've spoken to people like Sarah Game, Benjamin Hood, and a couple of others from the Liberal Party, and they're very keen to overturn. I know that Kai Fano, she is been on such things like Naked and Afraid and a bunch of other survival shows. She's got a survival handbook that she's made, and she does lots of awesome stuff. She did I think it was Operation Lockdown. So at the start of COVID, her and her partner, in the Flinders, they stayed on a station and pretty much lived off of the land hunting goats, and they got a little old brick cottage that they use for shelter. And she does absolutely amazing stuff, but she's working with a outdoor recreation union. I can't remember the name to be precise, but she's doing absolutely amazing work, and I know that they're working with the Liberal government to overturn it. And then you've got people like Robbie from he's been working on it. He's done lots of stuff to cover it. So there is stuff going on. It's just hard to, as an outsider, to get information on what's going on, and I'm guessing a lot of it has to be kept hush hush because there might be steps to try and block it from happening.
So we've got Philip Big in the chat, who's from Shooters, Fishers and Farmers in Tassie. Hello, Philip. You've been doing some great work too, by the way. I'll have to get you on my show as well. He said
Likewise.
Tasmania had a ban on bow hunting due to a knee-jerk reaction to a photo of a wallaby still living with an arrow in its neck. Obviously not caused by a bow hunter by the look of the arrow. So this is the kind of things that governments do, right? They take a political opportunity, that something's happened and they can't even prove who did it. They just jump on that and use that as an excuse. And the public, who aren't sympathetic to what we do because they're not educated, our organisations have been woeful in getting the community to appreciate or understand what we do. This is what's happened, and it's happened in Tassie with what Phil's just said. Did you hear about this example, Zach?
Yeah, unfortunately, that happened quite a few years ago. Ever since I've bow hunting's been illegal in Tassie. So, that's why it's always been ruled off of a place I wanted to go. Yes, they have hunting over there for fallow deer. They have amazing herds. But, because you couldn't bow hunt there, it's never been on my to go to place. Like, why would I want to visit somewhere where I can't go do my hobby? So that's always been unfortunate. I've always heard that it's quite nice down there, and Western Australia is the same. I've always heard how strict their gun laws have been compared to everywhere else. So it's never really been on my list to go there. Why would I want to go to a state where they're you know pretty much North Korea at the moment?
Yeah, that's fair. And just how did you get into hunting? What's your story? Where did you grow up? I haven't even asked you these questions. Where did you grow up? Who taught you how to hunt? And what's your advice to those who have never hunted before, how they could get into this, especially with the cost of living crisis? Dad just got back from a big hunt. He brought back some goats, so we've got that in the freezer just to have supplies. What would your advice be, and how did you get into being a hunter?
So long story. My parents separated when before I was 1 years old. So after that happened, I went and spent every fortnight weekend with my grandparents. Dad worked away on stations and worked around, so I stayed with my grandparents. They've popped grew up hunting, fishing, full driving. He did a lot of hunting to, shooting rabbits for furs and meat, shooting foxes for the bounty, shooting pigs for bounty back in the day to supplement their income. So he would work all day as a tire fitter when he was younger, and then shoot all night to supplement their income. So growing up, going out fishing and camping with him, seeing him reloading in the gun shed, and sitting in there with him, learning all about it. Then when I was old enough to start going to ranges, it was taking me out to the range, shooting the 22, and then I've always gone hunting with him. He'd take me out on his back and take me on short walks when he went out goat shooting, and rabbits, and everything in between. So I've always had a fascination with it. I was the kid that took, goat horns, goat skulls, goat skins to school, fox tails. It was show and tell, and I was there with a goat skin. Like, this is a goat I shot with my pop, and he tanned it, and taking heads in and a and a bunch of that stuff. So I was always an outcast in school because instead of being into sports, I was into hunting, camping, and fishing, which makes you the weird kid when you like to catch bugs and yabbies and bring dead stuff into school. So um, I've just always had a passion for it. And then when I was about 15, 16, my biological dad took me out bow fishing. He wasn't able to get his firearms license, so he got into bow hunting. So we went out bow fishing. I shot a few carp with him out in the backwaters here in South Australia on the Murray River. And we got back to his place. He put on a bow hunting DVD, and I was obsessed immediately. He gifted me a bow soon after that, and I started practicing. And then I got access to properties. I shot my first deer, shot my first goat, shot rabbits, hares, foxes, and it just took off. It's just something I've been passionate about. I got all of my friends into bow hunting that were around me at the time. Anyone that would listen, I'd be chatting to them about hunting. When I did a bricklaying apprenticeship when I was an apprentice, my nickname was Goat because all I spoke about was shooting goats. That's all I'd do. I'd finish work, I'd go hunting. And yeah, so it's just everything I've ever spoken about and has always been hunting, fishing, and the outdoors. I wanted to be a park ranger growing up, but then I learned that you spend most of your time in an office behind a desk, and you're enforcing stuff that I don't believe in. I hate national parks because they lock people out and they have poor management. And yeah, it's blown up from there. I've fortunately been able to go across to places like Texas, Mexico, New Zealand, the North and South Island hunting. I've met all these amazing people from around the world, being like through hunting and fishing, which has just been absolutely amazing. So anyone getting into it, we have this amazing thing called social media. Get on there, make friends, chat to friends and family, whoever has properties, get access, and just get out there. Learn what you need, and just get out there.
Bloody inspirational. And I know that you're teaching your boys how to hunt. Have they enjoyed it? Are they passionate about it too? Are they a chip off the old block, or have there been any times where they're not so sure? I remember my dad taking me hunting the first time, and it was, yeah, something that you remember forever. But once they educate you, like my dad was saying, we need to do this to protect our grandma's sheep. So to me, that made sense. And then seeing how he did it humanely and ethically, and the work that goes in before you get out to the hunt, that's something that stuck with me too. We're not cowboys running around shooting everything. It's very specific what we do, and we use science as well to determine how many kangaroos we can cull. They're a big problem when they get to big numbers. So there's a lot of science that guides what we do. Have your kids embraced it, or are they still a little bit? I know one of them's quite young. How are they going? Are they future hunters?
Yeah, so I've taken both out. The oldest, he's my stepson, so as soon as me and my wife got together, I started taking them out fishing, and then slowly got took him out hunting. So he's been out, and I've harvested a few deer with him. I've taken him out spotlighting numerous times. Make it as fun for him as possible. Snacks, some soft drink, pillows in the back of the car, blankets. Just make it super fun so that they want to keep doing it. So he's been out. He's showing more and more of an interest in wanting to do it, but he really loves the fishing side of it, especially like squidding, so casting lures out back and forth. So that's something that he's really passionate about, which is great to see. And my youngest, he has really had no choice. He was less than a week old. He was born at the beginning of April. So as soon as he was back from the hospital, I had him strapped to my chest in the kitchen, and I was butchering deer on the bench with a newborn strapped to my chest. And then as soon as he was old enough to start holding his head up and be able to be in a baby carrier on my back, I'd take him out and check trail cameras and just go for walks, get him used to the bush. And he's been hunting with me every rut since he could.
Oh, beautiful. That's what we need, the next generation. And that's something that I'm concerned about, especially with what's happening in WA, is that people won't have the opportunity to teach our kids how to do this because we'll be so bloody restricted. We won't be able to access the land that we need to, let alone the firearms that we need to, or the bows in this case in SA. That's something that I really implore the leaders of the organizations to think about. I know a lot of them are a lot older, and I never try and be ageist or make it a debate about boomers versus us. But what kind of world are you leaving us and the next generation if you're not fighting when you're in the positions to fight? Have they thought about that? And that's something that I'm trying to get across to them, because people can be very short-sighted and only care about what affects them. A lot of us are like that in this industry too. If it's a bow hunter, like you said before, the shooters don't care, but it all adds up. So we all need to be thinking, I think, a little bit more about everyone else and not just what affects us. Another question I was going to ask you, Zach, is what would your advice be to someone who's never shot a gun before? What would you start them out with? How would you go about even getting them to the range in the first place? That's one of the problems I've had. People seem to be terrified of guns because of the propaganda against firearm ownership in this country. Have you ever taken a mate out shooting that's never shot before, and how did they find that experience, and how do you get them there in the first place?
That's an awesome question, Kate. Fortunately, being in South Australia, we have a law where we can take people without a firearms license out to private property and let them shoot in our supervision. I know other states do not have this, and that blows my mind. That's something we should campaign against in other states and make this legal, because over numerous years, I take a few people out every year, spotlighting, target shooting, who have never shot a gun, who have grown up in the city, and I've gotten them into hunting, and I've converted them to go get their firearms license. And taking a small group of friends from work out and bringing in freshly harvested meat all the time, it's really opened their eyes up to hunting and shooting. So it's been absolutely amazing. A few of my workmates have gone and got their licenses. I know that one of my mates, Brad, and his wife, they're currently just waiting for the final bit of their paperwork to get their license. They've done their tests, and it's been a couple months, so they're quite frustrated. But he's actually coming up to New South Wales with me this year for his first ever real big hunt. So where I start them all out on 22s, but I've got a few different rifles, so I take everything out with me and I get them to shoot everything from an air rifle, 22 Magnum, 22 Hornet, 243, 270, 300, 12 gauge, and just let them have fun, shoot cans and bottles, and just really enjoy it. And then after we've done a bunch of target shooting during the day, we go out spotlighting at night. And I've fortunate enough, I've taken so many friends out to take their first animal, whether it's a rabbit, hare, or a fox, or a goat or a deer. So it's an incredible thing. I get more enjoyment of taking people out and them shooting their first animal and shooting their first firearm than I do, shooting something myself majority of the time.
You're an absolute bloody inspiration, Zach. This is what we need in the community. Other people taking the time to just show a mate how it's done, taking them out and giving them that opportunity, because it's teaching a lifelong skill that everybody should have the opportunity to learn. And I agree with you. The fact that in other states you cannot shoot under supervision of a licensed firearm owner, it's putting more barriers in the way of letting us learn a skill that has been around since humans started to walk. So thank you for everything you've done. Is there any laws in South Australia or any potential changes to the law that you're concerned about? What's happening in South Australia? I've been too busy obsessing about WA to keep on track what's going on here. Is there anything that you want to let people know is coming on the horizon that we should be concerned about?
Look, apart from the bow hunting ban, we've also had, a snapper fishing ban for the last few years here in South Australia. I did see just before Christmas, we've had a change to our shark fishing and stingray fishing regulations. So they've changed bag limits, they've changed take species, and because you get a few bad eggs, weekend warriors, they go out, they'll catch a stingray, they'll cut off the tail, they'll leave it on the beach, or they'll cut it, cut the wings off, which is perfectly legal to cut the wings off, but then they don't dispose of the carcass. Or, you get these people that catch a shark and then they don't know what to do with it. It goes bad, and then they end up dumping it, on the side of the road on the way home, which we see a little bit of. So they've had a huge change of that. There's going to be new implications for people doing the wrong thing, which is, more law, which is just what we need. Which is, from a few bad people doing bad things, it just ruins it for the rest of us. I think you can have like a combination of two sharks in South Australia now, or one shark, one ray, and they've changed that all up. And then there's also a up and coming ban on the York Peninsula for camping and full driving on a couple of the beaches down there. And it's, again, weekend warriors, maybe young kids who haven't been shown actually what to do when you're out camping and how to clean up after yourselves. They go down there, they drink, they run amok, they leave all their trash, they tear up the sand dunes, and just because of things like this, we're getting locked out.
Your behaviors do affect other people. That's something we also should remember as well. I've got a few other people in the chat. Hello, if you're just tuning in, I am Kate Fantanel, and I'm talking to my mate from South Aussie, Zach. He's the host of Hunting Connection podcast. He's a hunter and he's an inspiration to those of us in the community who advocate by ourselves as individuals to try and save our traditions and our sport. Philip Biggs posted again, one thing that's consistently ignored is teaching our young real skills like shooting, fishing, and farming. They need to understand what life really is. That's a great comment, Phil, and I know you're doing some great work in Tassie, trying to educate people. And that's the other thing that I think is upsetting, is it's an Australian way of life. And the government are just getting to the point now where they're changing our culture through over-regulation. And we're peacefully trying to go about our activities. We're doing a public service, culling feral animals. We're hunting for food for the table, fishing as well. And it's gotten so bloody hard and we're the ones being punished when we haven't done anything wrong. Do you feel the same way, Zach? I know I'm very anti-government, but is that kind of how you're feeling now?
Look, yeah, I'm very anti-government as well. I just hate, again, I hate all things to do with the government. You know,
Mm,
putting in laws. I'm very free choice as long as what you're doing isn't hurting anyone else. Um, I don't smoke weed, but I'm very pro it for people that do. Just all of that stuff. Like I said, I find myself that I sit very in the middle. But you speak to people on the left and like that anti-hunting side, they'd say I'm pretty far far right, which I'm
mm,
not. I think I'm pretty well centered. But yeah, it's just one of those things. You get places like WA where they're going to punish people if they talk bad about the WA government on social media. Like it's just like that's North Korea shit. That
mm,
should not be happening in Australia. And look, like I said, I find myself pretty well centered. Being Australia Day weekend, we've had lots of fun here in South Australia over the past couple of days. If you've seen any of the news, you've got these neo-Nazi groups, which I don't agree with. I'm all for everyone from every different culture. I've got many great friends from all different backgrounds, and I've learned lots of amazing things from them because I've learned about their cultures, their way of cooking, their way of hunting, their way of fishing. So I do not stand for that at all. But when you've got these survival day protests going on, and they're somewhat pretty peaceful, they're allowed their freedom of expression. But then you get the other side, um, not being able to have their freedom to express. They look like they were pretty peaceful. Look, I wasn't there, I don't know, but from what I've seen, it looked like the police just made it out to be worse than it was in the media. We should all have our freedom of free speech, but it's just all constantly under threat. Whether you're on that side of the fence or this side of the fence, we have this free speech for a reason, and we should be able to do it as long as it's not hurting anybody else.
mm, absolutely. I'm just talking about WA. I know I bang on about it a lot, but how would you feel if you were living in WA and these laws that are going to be coming fully into effect in April, limiting the number of guns you can own, the storage requirements 10 mil for a safe if you have more than two handguns, the private medical information that you have to hand over to the police in order to obtain your license? How would you feel if you lived in WA? And can you understand why a lot of Western Australian shooters are so upset and so demoralised because of the way that we've been treated by the government? What would you think if you were living there, and what would you do?
Look, I made this reference on the podcast with Aussie the other night. Me, if I was in WA, I would be getting everyone to stand their ground. How many firearm owners are there in Western Australia? Do you know those numbers?
90,000, 90,000.
So if you had 90,000 people, just quickly, with Western Australia, is it 90,000 registered firearm owners, or do they have to register each firearm so it's 90,000 registered firearms? Which one?
90,000 registered firearms
Okay,
because
so
they license the gun, not the individual there. So
yeah, so
it's
you would
different to the other states. Yeah.
yeah, so you'd have maybe less than maybe half of that if people have 5 to 10 firearms, if not more each. So you got less than, even if you have 40,000 people say fuck. So sorry, not
No,
sure if
you
I'm allowed
can
to swear or
swear.
not,
Free
but
speech. Free speech.
if you have 40,000 people say, fuck you, I'm standing my
Mm,
ground, I'm standing here peacefully, this is my right to have these firearms, to hunt, to, shoot feral pests on my property and other people's property. That's what I would be encouraging. Yes, it's not the right thing to do, but it's something we need to stand our ground as outdoor enthusiasts, because every state we're losing something left, right, and center. And it's just absolutely crazy. I know that this protest that's being organized is just a shamble at the moment.
Mm,
I can see the good sides of it and I can see the bad sides of it. I know that there's a lot of people saying don't go to it, and there's a lot of people saying go to it, and it's one of those things where I'm stuck in the middle. I think if it's done respectfully and you can get the big organizations out there in the shooting community and the hunting community, it could be really, really good. But you're going to get, whether it's people pretending to be firearm owners and being out there making a ruckus to, make firearm owners look, you know,
mm,
bad. It could be really bad in the media, but if it's done respectfully and well organized, it could be amazing. Like, if you look at how Mansfield Hunting and Fishing put on the hunting expo last year, it was a street expo, the whole in the middle of the town. It was an amazing thing. There was lots of food, venison demonstrations, stuff like that. If you could organize a protest like that, but where it's, respectful, but you have the numbers to show the government that we're not standing for this shit anymore.
mm.
Like,
One of my big concerns, and I'm coming on Zach's show straight after this. I'll be recording with Zach, so I'm on his show. I'll be on his next episode. One of my concerns that I've been very vocal about is the area where it's being held in WA is an area where police can stop and search without a warrant. They can want people for weapons, and there is mass surveillance. So I've suggested very strongly to the organisers of the rally, which is Shooters Union and Politics Reloaded, who is sponsored by Shooters Union. I've said to them, please, can you just hold it in a private venue where the police can't enter, where people have their privacy respected, and we can be in a safe space, for want of a better term. And they've refused to listen to me, and I'm very concerned that individuals who attend this rally in that area, which is going to have WAPO all over it, they are going to be the first ones who are getting a knock on the door when the laws come fully into effect in April because they stood up against the state. That is where we're at in WA. It's a total police state, and they are looking at people who are against the government. I'm already on a list. I don't want people to go there because they think it's going to be a big rally like 1996. It's not. The other shooting organisations are not on side. It's Shooters Union going it alone, and the timing is a bit off. We have an election there on March the 8th. It's too late. So that's my concerns, and I'm happy to chat you through that on your show as well, Zach. But I understand, and I was so excited, right? I got the phone call to be the MC, and I was ready to go. My dad was like, I'll come over from South Australia. But because it hasn't been organised, like you've said, in a way that gives people that privacy and can be a safe space, it's just not going to work. And I'm very disappointed because I'm like you, right? I want to be out there loud and proud, but there's a way you have to do it. And the political situation in WA, it's a moving beast. Things change every day. There's an election around the corner, so everyone's running around trying to get everything together to win. So I'm just concerned the rally won't deliver us what we need, which is the public on side, right? That's what we need. We need to educate the people. That Mansfield event, perfect. That sounds great. Cook venison up. I know you do that too. Take venison into work. That's the kind of thing we need to do before we go full 1996 rally again. So, but I appreciate your feedback. I did also want to ask you, what's your favorite hunt that you've ever been on, and where did you go?
oh man, that's a hard one. I've had too many favorite hunts to count. Whether it's just taking new people out and them harvesting their first animal, whether the my most recent New Zealand trip, I flew over to New Zealand to meet a guy that a friend suggested on Facebook that I go hunting with. So I went out with him. He's a South African born guy living in New Zealand, Kiwi. He's grown up in New Zealand. He's a very, very passionate hunter and outdoorsman. His goal is to be a guide, and he was taken out to Americans that he met while he was at a guiding school in Colorado, I think. So I got to spend time hunting with these young hunters, and they were, 20, 19, and I think maybe even 18 as well. So young guys, but very, very passionate. So that was just awesome to share camp with them. And then, we got to spend a night in a hut with two other people that weren't hunters, but they were just hiking through. So we shared some tar with them. We shared, some deer, and we just sat around talking. So people that never had experience with hunters, they got to sit down and eat some of the game and hear about what hunting actually is, staying in this hut. So that was a pretty cool experience.
Beautiful. And my mate Ira's just jumped on the chat. So WA has 90,000 gun owners with about 350,000 registered guns. So there are 90,000 individual people out there. And I agree. I think mass non-compliance is our way out of it. Make them come and take every gun, every lever action, every air rifle that they've banned, make them come and take it, or send them to a mate interstate. I got my guns out of WA, gave them to my dad because I do not want one gun head to the States. So we'll keep an eye on WA. We're coming up on an hour. We've got to jump off because I'm going on Zach's show. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Zach from South Australia. He's the host of Hunting Connection podcast. Please jump on and listen to some of his episodes. There's one of me on there that caused a bit of spiciness back in the day, so that's still up there. Aussie Reviews was on there recently if you'd love to hear what he's had to say. Zach, any parting words of advice? What can you tell shooters and hunters and fishers in Australia? How do we protect our traditions? What's your one piece of advice that you would give to us?
Stick together, work together, stop the infighting, and just show the government that we're not going to stand for this shit anymore. We are outdoors men and women, and we want the respect of that. Stop taking away our rights, stop taking away the areas we can do it, and stop listening to the inner city people who have no idea of how life in Australia actually works outside of a city.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Amen. Zach, thank you for joining us. I'm jumping off now. Thank you again for joining us on this live stream. And I'm going on Zach's show now, so you have to listen to that too. Thanks, everybody. Happy Australia Day.